Hey, Patrick, can you hear me?
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Brittany. Yes, Daryl, I can hear you.
Okay, great.
All right, just on my technical support calls, I finally got the Zoom set up so I can do all the launching to the live Facebook stream and everything directly from Zoom instead of having to go a roundabout way like we were doing.
Okay.
I wish I could have forwarded you the remarks from the president of Alaska Chess when I asked her about sharing nationally for March. She's ecstatic.
That's great. That's good news.
Do you think 500 will be a problem, Daryl?
Honestly, Patrick, this is the first time that we've ever been sort of invited to participate in this national, it's called a virtual community center. As AFE just launched it a few months, maybe a couple months back. And they look at all the content nationwide that all the states are offering, and they try to move around the country and identify unique programs from the state and say, hey, would you like to be a part of having this, be a part of the virtual effort and the community center. So I don't know. I was going to ask that question and see what the typical audience is for an event, because our license, the maximum capacity is the same as yours.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, we can up it. We were looking at it today just out of curiosity for that reason and others, but we looked at it and I think for one meeting, I think we can up the capacity if we need to for a single meeting.
Okay, I will find out tomorrow. I'll get a little more information from the organizer on the East Coast, and see if I can get a little more on what the average audience is, the average audience size is for their national events.
Gotcha. Now, are you looking, you don't see me, correct? You're seeing my shared screen?
I can see both. I can see you and your shared screen. Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
That's news to me.
Yep.
I'm losing my voice, Daryl. I've been on too many Zoom calls today.
I hear that. Yeah, I can see your Facebook page that you're on.
Oh, good. Okay, good. But you can see the flyer. That's my concern because I can't.
I can't see the flyer. I can see the. I don't think I see a flyer.
Oh, my shared screen is supposed to be a PDF flyer.
No, it's actually it's facebook.com. So it's actually showing Facebook right now, and there's it's just like a remember password, and there's a few other sponsored links, but it's not a PDF.
Oh goodness. Okay. Well, let me see what I can do about that because that's not what I'm supposed to be sharing. Screen sharing is paused because I see. Okay. All right, let me try that again. Hi, George. Oh boy, yeah, sure enough. I see what happened. Okay.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, George.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Bear with us on our technical jargon stuff. That's what we do for the first 20 to 30 minutes before we launch.
All right, not a problem, not a problem. I logged on a bit early anyways, so.
Not a problem. And we encourage folks to do that who need help with Zoom. We can kind of talk you through some things.
All right.
All right, Daryl, I'm going to try to share again.
Okay, so now it's a photo of you.
Yeah, no, the photo should just be like as if I were on the camera. Now this is what should be shared. Boy. Find a piece of my meeting to grab it. There we go. Why can't I do that?
Patrick, can you hear me?
Yes, Daryl, I can hear you.
Okay.
I was muted. I'm trying to get back to my screen share. I just can't even find it, Brittany. Like it's not on the controls. It's as if I cannot do it.
So, yeah, we're gonna have an echo here.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm just muting myself on and off, Daryl, because I'm making so much noise.
There it is. The only thing, Patrick, is it's about half of the screen. So if you maximize your screen, we might see all of it.
Yeah, I gotcha. It's because of the laptop.
Gotcha.
Did that work?
Not really.
Not really. Excellent.
Questionable. Oh, there you go. Now it's working.
Okay. Might be a delay for you, Daryl.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can
So
I can see half of it.
It's smart flyer.
I can see you scrolling up and down on it, Patrick. And now I can see the lower half of it.
Thanks, Daryl. And you can see the glorious old logo that we haven't replaced yet on this flyer, but we did do it today. I just got off the phone with our designer replacing all your logos.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no worries about that.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it, let's see, right there.
There's a button that you can press in like just view mode, or maybe try like quick preview something. There's got to be a different way that you can.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because I'm on the laptop and not through the VPN, Brittany. I mean, when I'm at work, this all works just seamlessly and fine, but on the laptop, it's just not behaving the same as I'm used to, as far as just what it's actually doing. And I get it. So yeah, you're just seeing, because it's a laptop, you're just seeing my whole screen.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is not what I normally share. Normally, I'm just sharing the document.
Right.
Oh, well. Hi, Sheila.
You do have a lady named Linda who will be watching on Facebook.
Oh, good.
She's been watching since you started. It looks like I can't click on her, but she's advertising the Go Red.
Gotcha.
All right.
Hi, Sheila.
Just making sure I got my camera set up properly.
Oh my goodness, your hair looks totally different.
Oh, thank you.
Of course, I haven't seen you in a really long time.
2 years. Patrick, our last presentation was 2 years ago.
I know, I cannot believe it.
It's gone by really fast. Okay, audio checks, video checks. Let's see if I can
I
get
can
a
hear you
little-
loud and clear. You can hear me, it sounds like.
Yes, and I can see you now too. There, that's a little better.
Excellent.
Okay, and you got my notes, so you know I'm not going to use a PowerPoint. We're just going to have a discussion.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, no
Okay.
worries. I think honestly, if we were trying to use a PowerPoint right now for the flyer, I'm on a laptop and I'm on a remote access, and so it's not behaving as I normally would have it working in my desktop.
Yes.
So yeah, I think the PowerPoint, thank you. That's helpful.
Okay, excellent. I am way out in the west side of Susitna Valley, so hopefully I won't have any connection trouble, but I have had a few experiences with Zoom where it just didn't work well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay. I think we'll be able to have some ability to technically troubleshoot if we have to, but your signal's probably going to be stronger even than some of what we have here in town, I would bet.
Could be, and it's evening time, so it tends to get slower during the day. I think a lot of us out here in the boonies are working from home.
Yes, I've noticed that tremendously. That's very, very true. Usually around this time of the evening, the East Coast is more or less logged off.
Okay.
Yes, I don't know if that frees up bandwidth for us, but
Okay, well, we're gonna stick with that and wish for smooth Zoom and a great conversation.
absolutely.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead then and put myself mute and turn off my video and go
Yep.
let my dogs out and get ready.
Sounds great, Sheila. I'll check back in with you just a little before 6:30.
All right, thank you, Patrick.
You bet. Hello, Connie, and welcome. greetings to those of you waiting for the meeting to begin. We will get started at 6:30. And thank you so much for joining us this evening. If anyone has any issues with Zoom or would like some help or anything along those lines, go ahead and just send a chat directly to me, the host, and we can help you out with that as well. Greetings to those of you who just joined us. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to get started at 6:30. In the meantime, use the chat feature if you need some help. Welcome to those of you just joining us to AgeSmart Let's Talk. We are thrilled to have you joining us on this frigid evening, although I don't know, Sheila, is it as cold out there where you are?
It is snowing at my house. Yes, it is very cold.
I thought it was too cold to snow. I was convinced it was, and then I was proven otherwise.
Yes, I've got about an inch on the ground already.
Oh, gotcha. I'm ready for spring. Well, folks, we'll get started in just a moment. And once again, if anybody needs any assistance with Zoom or anything that you're dealing with on your end, do chat with me directly to the host and I can assist you in that way. Otherwise, we'll get started in just a few moments. Thank you for your patience. All right, we are closing in on the bottom half of the hour. Once again, thank you to everyone who has joined us. We're just continuing to let a few folks in as they're coming in. Once again, thank you for joining us. On behalf of our sponsors, AARP, and our partners, OPAG, Publishers of Alaska Senior Voice and Alaska, and Anchorage Senior Activity Center welcomes you to AgeSmart Let's Talk for February 2021. We are thrilled to have Sheila Shin joining us this evening. She is rejoining us as she was with us in 2018 for our February AgeSmart Let's Talk. And we had a rollicking good time in the center, and we sure do miss that ability to be together. We're looking forward to that as soon as possible, once again. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We are going to ask that just in the beginning of this program, we keep cameras off. And what that will do is keep our broadband really performing well and optimized for our social media, because we are on Facebook Live as well. So I'd like to just announce that in case anybody understood or did not understand that we're broadcasting live on our social media as well. Well, once again, welcome to AgeSmart Let's Talk. And without further ado, I'll introduce our presenter this evening, Sheila Shin. She is formerly of the Gerontology and Geriatrics Initiative at University of Anchorage, Alaska. And she's not in that role any longer, but she is certainly still a very incredible expert in this field. And so we're thrilled to have her with us. Thank you so much, Sheila, for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Patrick. It's hard to believe it's been 2 years since I first did this presentation. Patrick is correct. We had such a great time. We had a good sized audience. We were all in person. I think I got my 10,000 steps in that night, just going from table to table to hand the microphone around. This evening's presentation is done entirely online. It's a new world for us. And I just want to let everyone know, I don't have a PowerPoint. I've decided that I'm not going to be a Zoom talking head tonight. And the reason why is simply because we're talking about intimacy. And how intimate is it to be sitting here looking at my home office, not even seeing my face, but looking at a PowerPoint? Not intimate at all. However, that is our times today, and this is the best we can do. So I appreciate everyone being here tonight. I'm looking forward to another lively conversation about intimacy. So let me first begin with who I am. Patrick introduced me a little bit. My name is Sheila Shin. I was formerly with the University of Alaska Anchorage campus. I was the director for Geriatrics and Gerontology Initiatives. I was with UAA for a long, long time, 15 years of my life. And I decided almost 2 years ago to take a big mid-career leap. I call it my mid-career life crisis. And I am now a court visitor with the Alaska court system. I am an expert case investigator for guardianship and conservatorship cases. It's a great use of my skill set, and it got me into the arena of working in direct service again. So I'm really excited to have the opportunity to get my feet back on the ground and work with the population I was trained to work with. I fondly refer to myself as a gerontologist in training. My background is in human behavior and gerontology. This is my 50th year living this life. So I've always struggled a little bit to call myself a gerontologist when I'm just finally starting to get some gray hair. I think turning 50 this year will finally lend me some credibility, and folks in the audience older than me won't give me a hard time. So I'm excited to be here. I want this to be more of a discussion. I'm going to run through a few areas of conversation, but I'm going to ask you all to please join in. I'm going to ask questions. I'm hoping everyone knows how to utilize the mute and unmute feature on my screen interface. It's on the bottom left-hand side. I certainly don't mind if anyone wants to interrupt. There's different features on Zoom where you can raise your hand, you can do certain things. Feel free just to unmute yourself and interrupt. I have no problem with that. There's also a chat box that Patrick just entered a message in. If anyone is unfamiliar with the chat box, you can open that in your interface, and having that open, you can also ask questions that way. Patrick's going to moderate, and Patrick, please interrupt with questions as they go along. I'm not the kind of speaker to wait until the end, because I don't know about you guys, but by then I've forgotten my questions. So please interrupt me. Okay, that being said, tonight's talk is about intimacy and how it changes with age. But first of all, let's set a few ground rules so everybody understands what it is that we're talking about tonight. So I'm going to start with the literal definitions of intimacy. And this comes straight from, I believe, Webster's.com. So there's two literal definitions. One is a close familiarity or friendship, otherwise known as a closeness. And second would be a private, cozy atmosphere, which I find very interesting. But think about it. Have you ever been in a cute little cafe or a restaurant in town, and it was quiet and cozy and intimate? And oh, there's my dog, Bo. My apologies. I have 3 dogs. They may come in and out. A private, cozy atmosphere. You guys are looking at my home office. I'm actually in one of my bedrooms in my home. My children have moved out. I'm an empty nester. And I work from home, and I've been working from home since COVID began and Anchorage really shut everything down. The court system shut down. We have been working from home now for almost a year. So this environment, to me, is an intimate environment because it's in my home and it's in my office. And I have looked at these walls now for an entire year. And I do admit I'm going a little stir crazy at this point. Okay, so definitions. The euphemism for intimacy, and this is where I want to be clear on tonight's conversation. Euphemisms, here's a couple. An intimate act, especially sexual intercourse. Synonyms to that include sexual relations, sexual intercourse, sex, intercourse, lovemaking, act of love, on, etc. Another euphemism is an intimate remark. So somebody verbally says something to you that you consider, based on your own subjective definition, intimate. So for example, you're in the grocery store line and somebody tells you that you are beautiful. That could be considered an intimate remark. Then we have closeness of observation or knowledge of a subject. Mr. Curtis thinks that I have great knowledge of this subject, so he might actually have introduced me as saying she has an intimate knowledge of the subject. So these are the way intimacy is used in language. And I want to be clear tonight that this is not a sex talk, and I'm not a sex therapist, but I'm also not adverse to talking about sex if anyone would like to actually talk about sex. I'm not sure I have a lot of expert knowledge to answer your questions, but it'll be a lively conversation. But tonight's conversation is more focused on what intimacy means to us human beings, the human nature, as well as how does intimacy change as we age. Okay, so we've covered the definitions, we've covered the euphemisms, we set some ground rules for the conversation so everyone knows, interrupt me. You know I'm going to ask for questions and I'm hoping to have a discussion. So let's start with just a little bit from psychology, sociology, human behavior. If this were a PowerPoint, I would show you slides with quotes and probably citations, but because I don't work at UAA anymore, I don't have to do those anymore. So I'm just going to read them to you. So psychologically speaking, there are 5 relational components to intimacy. Number 1, commitment. Number 2, deep feelings and expressions of caring and compassion. Number 3, thinking about another and sharing values and goals. Number 4, physical intimacy. That is where you will find the sexual relations part of intimacy, where we talked about the euphemism, intimacy is sex. And number 5, interdependence. So these are what researchers in psychology, sociology, human behavior consider intimacy as that umbrella, and these 5 components fall underneath. So intimacy could then not necessarily be just sexual, correct? It could be just close relationships. It could be close physical relationships. It could be relationships with pets. It can be relationships with kids. So I think in this respect, looking at it through that psychological framework of relational components of intimacy, when I consider my relationships that I would maybe define as intimate, of course, I'm married, so I have a husband, and he is the one relationship where we share the physical intimacy that includes sexual relations. So I have that relationship. I have 2 daughters from a previous marriage. These are 2 children I've raised. They know the good, bad, and the ugly of their mom. They know me not as a gerontologist in training. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure they know what I do for a living. They kind of have a general idea, but has something to do with old people. But they know the Sheila rather than the person with the college degrees or the court visitor that goes and works cases or the neighbor. They know me in ways that I think only my closest family and friends know me. So then that goes into number 3, family. I have a sister and a brother and a father. My mother has since passed away, but boy, my mom knew me best. My mom and I had an intimate relationship. She was the one person who would call me out on my tendency to get caught up in my fantasy thinking, but that's a whole nother presentation. So we'll skip over that. But my point is, intimacy is not necessarily a sexual relationship with a partner that you are in romantic love with. Intimacy can even come in snippets with strangers. How many of you have had a conversation with someone in the grocery store that all of a sudden became very friendly and somewhat intimate? I know I've had them where you're just chatting and somebody reveals something very personal. I may never see that person again, but in that moment, we had a little snippet of a moment of intimacy. I call those little moments of stranger intimacy. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I do find them a little awkward and uncomfortable when I think I'm standing here in line with, you know, feminine hygiene products and a gallon of milk, and somebody's telling me their life story. It feels somewhat awkward. But let me explain what that also is. That is a desire for social connection. And when I think of intimacy, I think of how human beings are interdependent on each other. There's a lot of euphemisms I could throw out there for that. It takes a village, and we are all one community. But what it really means is human beings are interdependent. We are social pack animals. We look for those opportunities for social connection throughout every day of our lives. And without it, human beings do not thrive. Now, there may be the occasional outlier who lives in a cabin in some remote place. Patrick and I were talking about, or maybe it's not Patrick, it may have been somebody else earlier, Anaktuvik Pass, very cold. It's not a holiday destination for anyone. Some people may choose to live in an environment like that, where we call them, oh gosh, see, I'm having a moment where I just lost the word. They live by themselves. That's very, very rare. Okay, humans are not meant to live by themselves. We're meant to live together and be independent together. Okay, so I'd like to go ahead and open up and ask questions of people in the audience. You've heard some academic definitions, you've heard some literal definitions, you've heard some euphemisms. I'd like to know if anyone would like to share what intimacy means to them.
Sheila, I'll start that off, and then we'll try to go around, and I'll try to pick on some folks to answer as well. But you know, intimacy is something very, very special. And the way that I think about intimacy in one aspect in my own life is the intimacy that we end up, you know, when we're working in support services or direct services, and it doesn't matter if it's seniors or who it is, but when you're working in a capacity where you're reaching out to somebody and they're vulnerable to help them, there is an intimacy that develops there. And I can say that throughout this pandemic, the participants in a lot of the programs that we help with food security have been such amazing people to engage with. And there is a level of intimacy that develops there with those folks that's really special. And it's been a nice thing to have throughout this pandemic to get to see those folks.
Thank you, Patrick. That was a good example. I've had a lot of that myself just over this last year.
I've got something similar. How about coworkers? Patrick and Linda are getting to know me pretty well, and they're the ones that I talk to most on the phone, and whether it's work related or personal, it's like I need somebody to talk to. But I think that's at least starting to be an intimate relationship in a non-sexual way.
Excellent example. Thank you.
So this is Pat, and I'm thinking what I hear you talking about is trust. So being able to trust somebody enough to get past, I'm fine how are you? And maybe share and sharing at least pieces of your life or your thoughts or your situation. So I think Patrick was talking about that. And then I think there also needs to be some kind of exchange. So if you tell me something that's sort of a deep, dark secret, I need to acknowledge that, that I'm honored to get that information, and then, possibly share something that would require some trust on my part to share with you. So I think, and I was also thinking about the pandemic and the bubble. My husband died a few years ago, and I just retired. So I am here by myself, and I love being by myself, but I have this little bubble of people and my sisters, and I've over the past year have become so much closer and so much more, at least verbally, I love you. It was so great to talk to you. I miss talking to you. I miss seeing you. So that's what I'm thinking about in intimacy. I really liked what you had to say, Sheila. It was really, really on target, I think.
Thank you. It's nice to see you again, Pat Dooley. Pat and I have worked off and on together over the years, 15 years or so I was at the university. Thank you, Pat. Anyone else have anything to share, their thoughts on what intimacy means to them? No pressure, anyone. Don't all rush me at once here.
Sorry, I've not been prompting folks enough, Sheila. I had to take my new puppy outside. She was in an emergency.
That's okay. That's okay. We've got one in the chat bar. Lorraine says it's a type of connection. And then I also want to note that Julie said hermit. You are absolutely correct. That's the word I was thinking of, a hermit. Okay, there are people in the world who are hermits, and they live in remote places and don't see people, except maybe once or twice a year. That is abnormal. If you had a bell curve of human behavior, that would be a very far outlier. Just like a person who can't live without constant human interaction is also an outlier on the opposite side of that bell curve. So Lorraine says a type of connection. I believe that as well. And I think that you can have these kinds of connections with people and with pets. And given that we've been now almost one entire year in a pretty significant pandemic, I will admit it's my first, and boy, this was a real interesting experience. And as someone who likes to study human behavior, I find it fascinating in one sense, but at the same time, I have been really concerned with how the isolation has affected me. Oh, I see one other. Yes, Lorraine, thank you. Religion. Yes, there is definitely an intimacy in shared spirituality. So that is an important one. Thank you, Lorraine, for mentioning that. So as we age, does intimacy change? And that's the question that is on everyone's mind in this presentation, because it's also the topic of the presentation if you got the fancy flyer. Does it change with age? Yes and no. Okay, so what changes with age? Well, of course, you have the physical body that changes with age that could make the physical intimacy challenging. You have the social aspect of aging, where you have intimate relationships where people die, or the relationships may end through divorce, or through a mutual ending of a friendship, or even a not mutual agreed upon ending, and somebody just ghosted you, which my daughters tell me is a very popular word for people just all of a sudden ignoring you and not interacting with you, engaging with you anymore. So yes, intimacy changes as we age, because we change as we age in all of the different realms of life. I have less intimate relationships with people, and that includes friends, family, loved ones, lovers. I have less today because I think as I've aged, I've gotten smarter on who to let into my intimate circle. And I think that comes with just experience and with some discernment to be able to recognize that not everyone is good for you. Not everyone is a good influence in your life. So, oh, and Mr. Webster here said contact through others through emails. No, I did not cover the digital side yet, but we will cover it here very shortly. So let me just read a few little snippets from studies that have been done. Loneliness in aging has been very heavily researched. We've had research on a global, national, as well as a local scale. So human beings are pack animals. I mentioned that. We are not meant to be socially isolated. Think about it. People in prisons, one of the hardest punishments for people in prison is the social isolation. It is the, what do they call it now? See, I've had a long day and I'm forgetting words because I'm tired and it's Tuesday. Where you are in isolation for 23 out of 24 hours a day. That is like one of the worst forms of punishment for any human being. We're taking away any opportunity for connection or intimacy. So in 2018, a Cigna study of 20,000 Americans found that most people consider themselves lonely. And this was based on a UCLA loneliness scale. So it was self-selected, but it is an academic measure used to gauge loneliness. Nearly half of these 20,000 people surveyed reported feeling alone or left out, while more than 40% said they feel as though they lack companionships, their relationships are not meaningful, and they're isolated from others. And this was in 2018. So this was even before COVID shut down our society. Another study here done by a professor also out of UCLA is about loneliness causing death. Can people die from being lonely? And the easy answer to that is yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I think that loneliness, and this is my humble opinion based on the research and the studies I've read, loneliness is actually what we used to call failure to thrive. And I have met many older adults, especially those that are homebound with no family around to check in on them and care about them, who develop intimate relationships with their providers, with the delivery driver for Meals on Wheels. That is literally their only source of human connectedness throughout each day of their life. So Dr. Cole says that we're all lonely from time to time, but the problems come when someone is chronically lonely day in and day out. He goes on to say that his studies found that that they have reduced the activity of the antiviral genes that protect us from various infectious diseases. So there's research that actually shows that people who are chronically lonely day in and day out have a lower health status. They're more susceptible to chronic diseases and infections. They're more susceptible to COVID-19. Another study here, this one came out of Psychology Today. And here's a quote: loneliness is as lethal as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. Loneliness isn't the same thing as being alone. Some solitude is good for you. So what we were talking about, hermits, those that choose to live by themselves off the grid, remote places, or I'm thinking of the Tom Hanks movie, and he was stranded on the desert island, and his most intimate relationship became his volleyball Wilson. That's a perfect example of how human beings crave social connectedness and what loneliness can do to someone's mental health. There's a lot of research that older adults, especially again, those that are homebound, unable to get out and socialize, can develop symptoms that mimic dementia. They can mimic mental illness. There's a condition that is, I'm not sure if it's in the DSM-5, but it's called paraphrenia. And that is an extreme case of paranoia in the elderly that comes with paranoid delusions. A lot of research believes that these are tied to loneliness and a lack of social connection. So yes, how does intimacy change with age? As we age, our social circles tend to shrink. And I talked about that a couple of minutes ago with my belief that a lot of that has happened to me just simply out of discernment and a personal choice to reduce my social circles. However, this last year, we've been forced to reduce our social circles. We've been forced to isolate, to socially distance. One of the hardest things for human beings to do is to stay away from each other. I'm not a big hugger, but I will admit I miss hugs. And now I don't even shake hands anymore. So COVID-19 has really changed the way we socially interact. And that has had some detrimental effects on the oldest old, the elderly that are homebound, those that have no one in their lives on a regular basis to give them some sense of social connectedness. What doesn't change when we age is the need for intimacy. That is an innate human trait, you guys. It is in us from birth, and it is with us until we die. That doesn't change with age. It doesn't lessen. As a matter of fact, in working with a lot of older adults over my career, I can't help but think that that desire may actually increase as you get older because you become more dependent on other people. You become dependent on other people for meeting some activities of daily living, as well as for many of us who live alone, safety. So that is something that never changes, no matter how old we get. That human desire to be socially connected with others, to have intimacy, never changes. Okay. All right, real quick, I'm just looking at my notes. Looking at the importance of something that we can't do right now, and that's the human touch. Unless it is in your COVID bubble, this last year I have missed. Okay, let me back up. I always thought I'd want to work from home, you guys. I always thought that would be like just the greatest thing. I'm an introvert. I don't want to get up and get dressed and drive to Anchorage and do my job. I'd love to work from home. And this is me a year later saying, wow, this is not at all what I thought it would, what it was going to be. The conveniences of working from home don't outweigh the sense of isolation I have being here by myself, day in, day out, looking at my same four walls with my dogs. That has literally become my career today. I'm grateful I have a job, but this was not at all what I thought it was going to be like in last March when I said, work from home, yay, this is the coolest thing ever. So human touch is part of intimacy. Human touch can actually foster a sense of intimacy. I know that the times that I've been with strangers where they've actually reached out and touched me on the shoulder or on the arm or made some gesture that was physical in nature, it instantly fostered a sense of trust and a sense of intimacy. Now, not everyone wants to be touched. The caveat to that, always make sure when you're reaching out that somebody is open to it. But here's a good example. Shaking hands has been socially acceptable and actually expected for several hundred years. The history behind shaking hands is the gesture is you mean well. So you mean well, and you're not armed. And I didn't really realize that, but that is actually where the historical shaking hands social norm came from, was to show when you reach your hand out that you don't have a gun on you and you're going to shoot someone. But we've lost the shaking of the hands in COVID. We've lost the human touch in COVID. I had a very, very emotionally charged case recently where I met the person at the hospital. They let us in for professional visits. We do the screening. I'm wearing my mask. And this person started to cry. And I actually decided to go ahead and throw COVID caution to the wind. And I asked, may I give you a hug right now? And I hugged her. And she said, you're the first person that's hugged me in weeks. And she was in the hospital. They'd been taking care of her all day, but nobody hugged her. And that moment, and she was a stranger to me, that moment created a sense of intimacy and met a need in her right then and there for human touch. The desire for human touch never goes away. The desire to have connection and intimacy never goes away as we age. That's why there are actually simulated animals in some nursing home settings, especially those that are geared toward working with people with dementia. Just the act of holding the animal in one's lap and petting that animal reduces blood pressure. It fosters a sense of happiness. It creates a little sense of intimacy. And there's research on this that shows just how important this really is for of any age, and how difficult it's been for those of us experiencing a pandemic. Yes, robotic pets. Thank you, Patrick. It's fascinating research how it can actually change someone with dementia. It can open them up again, and they can have moments of lucidity and remember things that they had not been able to remember before. Therapy dogs in hospitals, again, same concept. Pets can be a great source of intimacy and connectedness and a sense of belonging with someone else, even if that someone is not human. My aunt is 76. She lives by herself. Her husband passed away 18 months ago. She lives by herself. She has a crazy cat. And this cat, I believe, has turned into her own personal therapy cat. Her husband died. She's now stuck in her house. She's in Phoenix. So anyone watching the transmission rates, Phoenix is ridiculously high. She really hasn't left her house much in an entire year, but she has her cat. And then she has us family members. We check in with her at least once a week. I know I talk to her probably every couple of days. Everything we can do to foster that sense of connectedness, because she is high risk. So what are some of the things that you all have done to continue having these social connections during a pandemic when we're not supposed to go anywhere or see anyone? Telephone worn out. Yes. Anyone taking advantage of more activity on social media or video chats? Zoom yoga, Zoom meetings, yes. Zoom, family Zoom meetings, yes. Yes. I don't know about you guys, but boy, I think after this pandemic is over, I think Zoom's going to take a nosedive in stock. If anyone, no, I'm kidding. We will always have Zoom. Work, yes. Okay, virtual fitness. Oh, that's a good one. Virtual fitness. You're able to maintain a connection in your own mind, even if you're not physically interacting with someone in person. It's amazing how technology has allowed us to stay so interconnected. Imagine if we didn't have it. FaceTime with mom at Pioneer Home. FaceTime, yes. That is an excellent app. Facebook Messenger has a video chat. Zoom, you can get a personal Zoom account and use it as well. Walking with friends outside, absolutely important. This summer was wonderful for being able to be outside. I don't know if I'd want to take a walk today. It's been awfully chilly, Pat, and snowing at my house, but nevertheless, being able to be together, even at a social distance of 6 feet apart. Zoom fellowship services, excellent. All right, so I see that we've got a lot of tech savvy people in the audience, and I think that that is great. First of all, if you weren't somewhat tech savvy, you really probably wouldn't be on this Zoom call. But secondly, when looking at how to increase your social connections in a pandemic, folks, online is really where to be. And if you are lucky and you're tech savvy, yay, great for you. If not, find a teenager. I love teenagers to come over and show me how to use things and how to download apps and get online and do these kinds of things. Oh, I have to say that, Pat, I have to quote you here. Walk every day, no bad weather, only bad clothing. You're absolutely correct. I really could get my snow pants on and go for a walk. I may do that after this presentation is over. I know my dogs would really enjoy it. So anyway, okay, how do you get out and meet people in the middle of a pandemic? We got some great examples already: virtual exercise, virtual fellowship, virtual churches. We have this virtual presentation. I've seen all kinds of stuff. There's groups, book clubs that get together today. Friends tell me about wine and dinner nights, family gatherings over Zoom. These are all great ideas. There's a lot of hobby groups, internet groups, the exercise groups, virtual exercise groups. Pat Dooley's up for a walk even when it's 20 below and snowing. Another way to increase your social connections is volunteerism. According to research, it is actually one of the greatest ways to keep yourself socially connected in your community, to foster a sense of interdependence, which creates that sense of intimacy, is to volunteer. There's a lot of volunteer opportunities that don't require you to go outside. And I'm sure that Patrick is well-versed on volunteer opportunities since he works for the senior center. And there's AARP is a great place to go to get information on even just being a pen pal or a telephone pal to a homebound senior. So somebody is checking on them. Julie here mentions Nextdoor to learn and meet your neighbors. I have actually met more of my neighbors in pandemic times than I have in the 5 years I've lived here. And I will admit, we all live on big plots of land, so we don't often see each other, but we do now because I think we're all stuck at home. Pat says, work with several community groups and value those interactions and sense of common goals. Working with like-minded people, absolutely. Then you also have the option of doing what I call the one-way social connectedness opportunity. I consider that to be, I like to listen to podcasts. I like to watch YouTube videos on topics that interest me. It could be something as simple as watching a movie. It's, I believe, the mental trick that we play on ourselves of hearing another person's voice in the room. Even if we're not interacting with them, it still can change a sense of loneliness in one's mind. Just having that, like simulated pets, can actually change one's perspective on loneliness. And then last but not least, internet dating. Yay, and somebody just commented that on the chat box. I saw it as the scrolls went by. Internet dating. It is the way to date today, according to people in Generation X and Y and millennials and everybody that's younger than me, because I am of the generation that falls right in between. So I am what I would call a a digital native, but somewhat of a digital immigrant. So online dating was a really new experience for me when I tried it myself approximately 9 years ago. So anyone doing any internet dating? Anyone want to admit that they date online?
I would be happy to share a little story, Sheila.
Yes, please.
I tried Zoosk this pandemic in these pandemic times. It's one of the newer platforms, I gather, and I'm not on it anymore. It was kind of a nice little deviation for a little while. And you know, honestly, it's a place where one of the things that I discovered, and I've heard this from others as well, including my sister, who's now married to somebody she met online, it's just the simple fact that you can make really great friends too. And I think if you really kind of have a good approach to how you interact with people in general, you're going to have probably a good experience online. It can be weird too, though. You definitely, once you get in the driver's seat and you're actually operating under a profile for online dating, you kind of have to pay attention to it. You can't go a week or so because you're doing homeschooling or you're trying to raise a puppy and not interact with people. So that's my one tip. Stay on top of it.
I think it's very time consuming. This is Lorraine here. I haven't done it for years, but I think it's very time consuming. And for me and my point in life, it's not worth the time consumption. So, you know, because you know, I have a friend who did it and she was seeing on the average of meeting, I think she said 3 to 5 people a week. That is exhausting to read through that, and you know, so, but you know, it's all what you're looking for.
Good points, Lorraine and Patrick. Thank you for sharing. I see that Julie posts in the comment box, it's how she found her husband over 10 years ago. It's how I met my husband as well. And 2 years ago, when we did this conversation, this is where it really got lively. It was all about dating. Where do you meet people? How do you go about meeting people? Well, today, our options are very, very limited because we're in the middle of a pandemic. And that's why I say the best way to maintain intimacy and social connectedness is to utilize technology. It really is all that we have at our fingertips to access every day. So, Julie, do you want to say anything about what your experience was like?
That means I have to unmute my mic. I was widowed for about a year and I had 2 sons and I knew that I didn't want to be single anymore. So on a free weekend on eHarmony, I made a profile. I said, you know, what can it hurt? And toward the end of that weekend, I get this message and we start talking about, we're both video gamers. And so he started talking about video games and stuff and we hit it off. He says, if you want to continue to talk to me, you're going to have to email me or something. Give me your cell phone number. So I was still going through rough time with the death and stuff and getting my life back together. And so every once in a while he'd bring me coffee or pick me up from school because I had decided to go back to school and just give me a ride. I mean, it was just the companion, somebody that understood we had something in common. He loved my boys. He had a lot of similar situations in his life. But I don't know if that's where you meant me to go, but there was also a lot of matches, they call them matches, that didn't work out. They didn't want to meet the boys. So you had to be, you had to be careful because there's people out there just wanting to sleep with you and not worry about not be involved or get to that intimate relationship beyond the physical. So that's my word of caution, but it is a good thing.
Sheila, I can jump in again and just share that, there's a certain age that I think when we approach or get to a certain age, just a little over the middle age ages, so to speak, there's a really blossoming, blooming online dating community in the 50 and up range for older adults. And that's where a lot of folks are settled down. That's where folks are in an empty nest situation much of the time. And so the reality is I hear so many incredibly positive experiences coming from my peers, whereas, that's not always the case. But I see that particular, this age group that I am rapidly joining as well with my white hairs. It's really, really interesting how open and how very secure and settled, and I think smarter, as you pointed out earlier, Sheila. There's an intelligence level that goes up with experience and age by far, and navigating that world can be a lot more pleasant in that aspect. So I could share that as well.
Also,
Excellent points. Thank you. Go ahead, Julie.
one more quick one. Not just for the marriage is the ultimate goal. I know people that have met others online just to be able to go have a travel buddy back before we had travel bans and stuff. But they play tennis, or they play golf, or they go fishing, or they, just that friend connection. That's, yeah. If that, hopefully that made sense.
It does make sense, Julie. And Patrick brought it up as well, that I actually still have friends that I met through my experience on Match.com. I had come out of a painful relationship, a very painful relationship. And my therapist told me, you need to get back up on that horse, Sheila. You can't just be a hermit. You need to get out there and try it again. And with much reluctance, I joined Match.com, and my therapist made me promise that I would say yes to every date within reason. But I would give it a try. And it was a very unique and unusual experience. It was not necessarily negative. I tended to ignore those, and there are plenty out there. But I met people that I'm still friends with today simply because we have so much in common. Now we're like adventure buddies, and they're married now and I'm married, but we all get together because he and I went on a date on Match.com. So online dating, it really can be successful. There's several people in this little group of us here right now who had positive experiences, but I do think it's the way you view it. I'm a human behaviorist, so I just love anything that allows me to open my mind and experience something new. I like to meet new people because I find their stories fascinating. I have always said if I could get a PhD in story listening, I would do it because I love that aspect. And that interest and enthusiasm in learning about other people makes it easy to create those relationships that eventually may lead to some kind of intimate relationship. So I don't think it's necessarily that online dating is where it's at. I think you do need to invest in it. It is an investment of your time. Now, real quick, I just want to say, I found a list of the top best dating sites. So best dating site overall for those over age 50, Match.com. I used it. It's where I met my husband. You do have to wade through the not so great. Best dating site for a serious relationship, eHarmony. That was Julie. Best dating site for professionals. If you're looking to meet professionals and you're in the height of your career and you just want to go getter just like you, Elite Singles. Best dating site for seniors over 60, Our Time. Best dating site for Christians, Christian Mingle. And a follow-up best dating site for mature singles is silversingles.com. So this is actually for the age 50 and over crowd, the crowd that Patrick and I are quickly getting ready to join. This is actually becoming quite a popular way of meeting people, not just necessarily dates, but people in general. And there are success stories. I've often told my husband we should be on a commercial, but neither of us really want to put ourselves out there like that. Yes, I see. Oh, he just posted it. You've got the over 60 R time. Excellent. Thank you. Before we wrap up here, give a little time for questions. I do want to say one thing. The online world is also a dark and scary world. And so I just must throw this out there because of what I do for a living today involves a lot of fraud. So I want to say, practice safety in your online world. Do your homework before you meet someone in public. Meet them in a public place, preferably with a lot of people around. Even in a pandemic, if you're going out on an in-person date, meet in public with other people. Don't meet them in a parking lot or a dark alley or anything like that. Have a healthy dose of skepticism. I love people. I'm a human behaviorist, love people, but I'm skeptical. I also know how to run background checks. You can background check people and you don't even have to pay for it. It is simple as a good browser like Google. You can court view somebody, anyone in Alaska. You can get on Alaska, the court system website, and go to search cases and you put their name in there and you see what pops up. I had one guy on Match tell me he was divorced. No, he wasn't. And the way I found out is because I looked him up on CourtView and I had met him for a bicycle ride on Saturday. He had filed the divorce paperwork on Friday. Oops. Okay, so healthy dose of skepticism. Romance scams are huge online. Catfishing. If you don't know what catfishing means, look it up. There's a whole TV show about people who con, scam, and catfish others. And the romance scam, I've worked these cases over the last 2 years, and they're some of the most painful cases I've had to deal with because people have lost their homes, they've lost their retirement accounts, their 401ks to a romance scam. And that just goes to show you just how important intimacy is. So much so that you'd be willing to give a stranger that you've never met your house because of how their attention feels to you and how it combats your loneliness. So these are very real things, folks. AARP is a great resource for all things scams, as well as elder fraud unit with the state of Alaska. There's lots of resources. Know what a romance scam is, know how to background check people, don't meet people in public, and hopefully this pandemic will start to wind down. We can get out again and we can hug people, we can shake hands, and we can be within 2 feet of each other. And in the meantime, I highly encourage everyone, utilize technology as much as you can. On that note, do we have any questions? I'm aware of the time and I don't want to keep anyone too much longer. Anyone have any questions or stories they want to tell about their intimacy experiences?
If you don't mind, Sheila, I'd also like to ask everybody to go ahead and turn their cameras on. As we get to this point, we're pretty safe and we can turn those cameras on, I think. So it'd be nice to see everybody and for Sheila to see our audience.
Yes.
So I invite you to do that, everyone. Go ahead and turn your cameras on. And I don't think I have enough control to do that on my end. I can just ask you to. There's Julie.
Hi. Okay. So you all can see me and I can see you now. And you know what? The conversation just got a lot more intimate. Being able to look at each other, see? Yeah. And that's why I didn't want to come in here with a PowerPoint full of citations that nobody cares about, because you can't talk about intimacy without feeling some kind of, even just a little snippet of it with the people that you're talking with. So nice to meet all of you. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you.
It's nice to meet everyone.
I can't turn my video on, but thanks.
Thank you. And I'm stick around for another couple of minutes if anyone has any questions or you got a story to tell or You want to hear how my husband approached me on Match.com? I'll tell you what he said. He knows I'm talking about him tonight.
Yes, I want to hear that.
Y'all want to hear that story? Okay, so this was a year into my online dating experience, and I admit it is a big time sink. It's labor intensive. You got to work it. So I was getting a little tired. I had tried Plenty of Fish, eHarmony, and I was utilizing at that time Match.com. My husband sent me an email, and it was just one line, and he said, "Hi, do you think my poodle will get along with your pit bulls?" Now, it sounds kind of nutty, right? But here's the thing. It meant to me that he read my profile, because a Match.com profile, at least back in 2013, I think when we were using it, you get all the way to the bottom is where I put, I like to go for hikes with my 2 rescue pit bulls from the pound. So what it meant to me is this man actually took the time to read all through that entire profile to send me an email that had that information in it. And secondly, this guy is a tugboat captain who likes to think that he's a pirate, and he has a poodle. And when I asked him about that later on, you know, you're a dude with a poodle. And he said, I'm secure enough in my masculinity to have a poodle, and I also grow roses. And I was like, okay. And it was an immediate, it just fostered that sense of intimacy that this guy took the time to read my profile and to reach out to me with something personal. And that's how he won my attention. And we've been together for 8 years now, married for 5.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So anyone have any success stories they want to share? No?
No.
Mr. Webster's down there shaking his head. Mr. Webster, are you going to sign up for eHarmony when we get off this presentation?
No, my wife and I have been married 41 years.
Oh dear, that would complicate things then.
A little bit.
41 years. So let me ask you this, Mr. Webster. How do you keep the intimacy alive in your relationship with your wife? And I don't just mean sex.
Just never go to bed mad, angry.
That's good. That's good.
Other than that, I don't know. He puts up with me, so.
She puts up with you, and you're just a lucky man. That's awesome. Never go to bed mad. You know, I never sleep well when I go to bed mad anyway. That's great advice. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone been married forever and a day and have any great advice on that?
Mike and I have been married since 2012, and we met in 2010. So, but he still calls me on his way to work or home from work. And then every night he gives me a kiss goodnight. He doesn't like to go to bed without his kiss. He'll do me errands still after all this time, even if he doesn't feel good and I need something from the store because I'm being the hermit and scared to go out. He'll get up and go out and ask every time he's out, like visiting his friend or coming back home. He makes sure, do you need anything, hon? So I think that's really neat and important. Keeping that connection and doing the little things. Watching every night we watch a little bit of a TV show that we like together, and yeah.
You guys are friends. And some of the best relationships I have had stemmed out of friendship. I now, in this second marriage of mine, understand when people say, my spouse, my partner is my best friend. I understand what that means. And I do believe that base of friendship really does increase and maintain our sense of intimacy together. It just makes then the romantic side of our relationship that much better.
It did. And then also, even from the beginning, like the first time I met him, he walked me to I lived in an apartment building. He walked me to I know we're running out of time, to the door, and he didn't ask to come into the apartment because there was a public walkway inside the building and then the apartments, you know. And I was kind of leery. I didn't want to show him where I lived because I didn't really know this guy. And he says, "Can I have your hand?" And he kissed my hand. That he had me from there. But
Nice.
That's
Excellent.
not where I was headed with that. Besides that, no.
Well, gosh, I hate to draw a conclusion to this because it's obvious that we've got some really lovely things to share, and we certainly would love to hear more from everyone. But I do need to pay attention to our clock, and I just want to say thank you to everybody again for joining us, not only here on the Zoom platform, but also on Facebook Live. We had some folks also hanging out watching there as well. Sheila, what a wonderful job, always. It's such a pleasure to have you, and a great topic for us because the isolation of the pandemic has been obviously exacerbated for those that were in isolation already. So this is a really timely topic and very much appreciated. Everybody, let's give Sheila a round of applause if you would. We'll do the real applause, even though we can do the cartoon one as well.
Thank you all. I appreciate everybody attending tonight, and I have enjoyed this conversation. And if it weren't 7:33, I would still be talking because I could talk about this all night. So
Well, we're
you
going to
guys
have to
take
schedule
good
another
care.
opportunity. We'll schedule another chat. I think we need to do another social chat just to keep the intimacy flowing.
Yes, or maybe a series about intimacy, Patrick, just saying.
I think that sounds absolutely fabulous. Well, once again, thank you to OPAG, Publishers of Alaska Senior Voice. Thank you to our sponsor, AARP, our partners as well, and all of you in the audience for participating in AgeSmart Let's Talk with Anchorage Senior Activity Center as host this evening. We'll certainly look forward to seeing you for the next few months coming up. We have what's the next month? This is February, right? Okay, so March is going to be about chess. If anybody watched the Queen's Gambit, we're going to have Alaska Chess, a nonprofit, doing the presentation next month. And it sounds like we're going to promote it nationally through AARP. So that might be a really fun and big gathering online. So we're looking forward to that. We have Cyrano's Theater joining us in April for a presentation then about theater and the role of theater in our lives and how it can enhance our lives. So we hope you'll all come back and join us for the next few AgeSmarts as well, and actually every one of them. It'd be nice to have you along. Once again, thanks on behalf of everyone at ASAC, and thank you to Sheila and our audience. Everyone have a great night.
Thank you.